Hey, Alan, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here. My name is Alan Randolph. I'm a VP of Business Development at Kaivaccom. We make industrial cleaning equipment. So I'm in the how to clean up public spaces business. And I say to people all the time, it's a great business to be in because the traditional and most common tool is still a wooden stick with string tied to the end of it. A common mop is still the most common thing.
So there's a lot of
opportunity to be, a lot of opportunity to be successful. So I've been in that industry for different companies for over 30 years and really enjoy it. It's everybody cleans every day. So, I have a passion for helping people get better at it, more productivity, better outcomes.
I got to imagine it's a competitive space.
It is. There's a lot of products, right? Because people clean every day, people think they can make some magic elixir in their bathtub or have some little scrub.
Witch's craft, yeah.
Yeah, but then you see like a scrub daddy or some little consumer project that takes off and really becomes a new standard. But like I said, there's a lot of opportunity because the industry is still really, really, when we talk about sales in this industry, it really is the competitor is the status quo. The competitor is 100 years of mopping, right? Yep. And anything you do from a sales perspective is trying to get people to make a pretty fundamental change. And change is hard. You need to make people very comfortable with change.
So you really are selling change more than a product, right?
100%. Yeah. Right. And it took me a while in my career. Yeah. It took me a while in my career to figure that out.
Yeah. Because, they may be enamored with the product, but that doesn't mean they're going to buy it because you got to change their workflow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I've said this to people that I work with, and I try and keep it in the back of my mind. I think, when you're talking about selling change, people are going to go through a lot of different questions and a lot of different cycles in the buying selling process. But there's kind of four fundamental things. The first barrier for me, Brian, is always like, why are we even talking, right? Like, is there something here interesting enough for us to talk about? And quickly behind that is there going to be some compelling financial justification at the end of this road? Yeah. And I think most sales reps don't talk about the financial impact early enough in the deal. Like, you should have a pretty good understanding of your client's business and what impact you think you could have. And that conversation should be very early. It can be very provisional. It can be very like, hey, I've worked with a company like you. Based on kind of what I know about your business, I think we're chasing a $3 million opportunity here. Does that sound like something that would get you excited? So there's got to be some financial impact. Those two barriers kind of get you into the game. The next one is, to me, am I going to be the first one up this hill? Like, a lot of people like to be early adopters, but not very many people want to be the first adopter.
That's the very early.
You're going to have the earliest adopter. But even if others have done it, the last one that I will mention is the one I think people most often overlook is you got to make the client comfortable that they can execute this change within their business culture, right? Yep. Just because company X did it, that may give you some comfort it can be done, but that doesn't mean my company. I mean, we may be, fighting off a takeover. We may be looking to sell. We may be cutting capital. All kinds of things could be going on that you're unaware of. So can they execute? And asking those questions, I think, is really important.
So it sounds like these are hard learned lessons for you.
Absolutely. All of them. I've always been a curious learner, right? I've never seen myself as a great salesperson because in some cases, I don't even know what that term means, right? But I've always been very curious. I've always tried to work for companies or in and in the cleaning industry, I've always had a passion, like I said, because I think there's been so little development that there's a great opportunity which fueled the passion for wanting to help people. So, and I guess at the end of the day, I really like winning, and winning for me is putting the right solution together, and then the financial reward that comes with that, right? So,
So
all hard learned lessons. Yep.
yeah, so I get that you probably have great judgment of where to spend your time. Clearly, how do
Yep.
you get the people to change? What's your process? Let's say they look like the ones that could fit this. They have the
Right.
problem you solve. They recognize it. How do you get them to change?
Yeah. And that's where I come back to me, you've got to create this kind of understanding their buying model, but no matter who's going to appropriate the funds, whether they are budgeted or unbudgeted, right? In most cases, the projects I'm working on, when I show up, the change that I'm requesting is not budgeted. So
Oh,
we've got
yeah,
unbudgeted expense. So if you're going to go ask for unbudgeted expense, you got to have a very, very compelling financial model.
yeah.
And if you don't, then you're just playing the information trading game. You're not really moving towards a sale or a solution. And it is so easy to feel really good about trading information. I mean, I spent 20 years feeling
Never
good about
mind.
trading information,
I,
right?
I'm not in the trading information game.
No,
I'm in the
but most
trading
people
product for
are.
money game.
Yeah, absolutely. But most people are, they don't
They're
recognize
comfortable
they're in
with
the
it.
trading information game,
Yeah.
but that's what they are, right? Because it's like, hey, tell me more about that. Maybe can I try that? Maybe I'll buy one. Well, all
Right.
that's just trading information. That's not moving a project to a sale. So I think, learning how to kind of quantify I've done some very big deals for our company and big deals for the customers that I was working on, bigger deals than maybe they've done in this space ever. So you got to actually ask a lot of questions about how would this happen? Like how are we going to do this? Not the kind of it's not the I mean, and I love all the books you read, who's got to fall in love with this project. Like you know, but when you're actually in the trenches, like that's a question you got to get answered.
Yeah.
Like who now rarely do I get invited to be at that meeting, right? So
Ah,
I've got to make
yeah.
sure that I've got my my colleague on the other side of the desk fully prepared, and I might not be able to bring their passion level equal to mine, but it's got to get pretty close um,
Right.
to
Because
actually push this thing forward.
and give us a sense of the dollar size. It's six figures, seven figures.
Yeah, in the millions, right?
Really? Okay.
Where you're putting solutions together across enterprise platforms that could be 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 million, right? And
Okay.
in our space, those are huge deals.
Yeah. And they typically they're doing something today, right?
They're doing
And
something today.
yeah, and it's kind of working, but you have a better solution.
Well, yeah. And it's an interesting point because you have to really kind of at the beginning define it's working, they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like they're in business, they're successful, right?
No,
So what I'm talking about isn't preventing them from,
continuing.
meeting their shareholders' expectations, right?
Right.
So, and so it's really sometimes it's about what they're doing is inefficient. Sometimes what they're doing is ineffective. But one thing in the cleaning space that is almost always consistent is what they're doing is not very well connected to the person doing it, right?
Okay.
Nobody wants to go clean a public bathroom.
Go
Nobody,
figure. Yeah.
right? Now, let's compound that, Brian, and here's the tools. You got a spray bottle, a rag, and a mop bucket with dirty water. Have a party. Um, So what you get from that is 300% turnover in that space at that frontline worker. So a lot of times what I'm starting with is imagine that we could actually make this horrible task not horrible. Maybe we could even make it kind of fun, or make it at least not have the
Tolerable.
physical and mental stress that it currently has.
Yeah.
Because all of my solutions depend on an operator. Somebody has to do it, right? And so if you can't bring that, but they're not going to be in the room when we're talking about the deal.
Right. Right. You're selling a different outcome. You're not selling what the product does, it's what the product does for them. It's like,
right. And in a way, it's a big component of it is what's the product do for their employee.
Yeah.
Right.
Which the turnover is for them. The employee satisfaction is, it's for them.
Right. Yep. And as the labor market is tightened, but it doesn't really matter. Like, turnover costs money, the kind of massive turnover rates that you get at kind of frontline service jobs or custodial. I mean, I tell people, I think custodian is the gateway job to the American workforce, right? If you want to work,
you can always get
a day,
one, right? Yeah.
And you're willing to clean toilets, you can have a job today.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
But but the way it's currently being executed, you want to get out of that job as fast as you can, right? And move on to something else. So there is a transient nature to it that you have to just be conscious of as you're trying to sell solutions. So I'm selling change into chaos, which really takes a lot of kind of patience and a lot of asking questions and really trying to build that, what would it feel like if we actually could make an impact here in an area that hasn't changed for 50 years?
Yeah. And how can you tell if you've got somebody on the other side that appreciates that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think early on, the indicators are they asking questions you would assume they're asking, right? Like, you start asking about, well, what's your delivery capacity? Like, how long would it take to roll these things out? But for us, one of the key early indicators for me is when they ask, well, how could we prove that we're doing a better job? Because that's right in my wheelhouse, right? I mean, I'm a advocate of cleaning science and understanding that just because it looks clean, I mean, we just are on the back end of a global pandemic. So the virus that everybody's been afraid of for 2 years, you can't see. So if you're using a visual inspection to determine your outcome, we've got a pretty big miss. There are effective and relatively inexpensive and easy ways to measure things down at that level, but you have to so my clients aren't going to know any of that really, but I want them to ask the question, how are we going to know if it's better? That's a great question for me, because then that leads me into being able to work with them about the proof statement on effectiveness, the proof statement on worker impact, and then ultimately the financial impact.
And where are these people in the org chart? Where do they report up to?
Yeah, there's various levels. It usually doesn't start as high as you would think for big ticket sales. It's usually somebody who's kind of been pushed down the organization being a janitor isn't typically but managing the janitor process, which is kind of chaotic, isn't a great often place in the organization either. So these people, our customers, are mid-level managers, right? Who may hold some either asset responsibility or some process responsibility. But if you're in store operations and everything that may encompass, or facility operations or buildings and grounds, you get everything from new construction to HVAC to all of the services that are required to provide the experience for your customers. Cleaning's in there. It's important. But we've had so little movement for so long that it is really entrenched in kind of the past.
And
so you got to crack through that. Yeah.
So typically in enterprise sales, there's got to be a big personal win for that person that's going to run that gauntlet to fight for this to a lot of people who won't understand it.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's kind of that last part I was talking about, the comfort with the execution, because the risk is you go ask for $4 million worth of capital assets and then they don't get used, or your workforce rejects it, or you have blowback from other vendors that create drama at the C-suite. All those things are real. So you have to really help work through and anticipate. And some of that comes with experience. But as I would tell anybody listening to this, that's why I started with being a curious learner. The more you can understand about your customer's business, your prospect's role in that business, and their aspirations, I mean, most of these people that I've worked with have gotten promoted. I didn't ask them if they wanted to be promoted, but what I did was made them comfortable to take a big risk that actually put the spotlight on them.
Well,
and not everybody's willing to play in that arena, but when you find those people, that's where the deals happen.
Well, that's it, because you talked about like early adopter and stuff, and I can't imagine. It's just my pedestrian view. I've never sold to this profile.
Right. Yeah.
That job would not attract an early adopter, that it would attract more of a laggard, more of somebody
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is that, if they understand the financial impact, if the financial impact is significant enough and they understand, like, I'm not asking for 4 million, I'm bringing a $75 million potential savings project up the chain. Like, when you can flip that mindset, that's when you can get people to say, yeah, I'm willing to walk in with this, because I'm pretty sure I'm not getting in trouble for recommending that I can save the company $75 million, whatever that number is. It could be $1 million, it could be $100,000. It's all about the scale.
Well,
right.
And
when you're talking about enterprises,
that is incredibly powerful, but it's got to be believable. How do you make it believable?
Well, and that really comes in. You have to really get the client to buy in with you what their current state is. In my career, this is a mistake I've made many times, is I assumed that what they told me was the current state. I didn't validate it. And when I saw those differences, I didn't take the time to drill down, really set that context, get complete buy-in that, no, this is where we are, Brian, right? We are here, and this is the impact of being here. Now that we have the current state really defined, then let's look at what the proposed state is and get you comfortable that we could execute, because then that financial model that you built becomes real.
Yeah. And have you been able to, I take it you're a leader today, right? Do you have a team?
Well, I've had a team. Now I'm really kind of coaching across multiple different teams, and helping, mentor a little bit, use my experience to help people try and fish a little higher, expand, accelerate. So it's more kind of across the whole platform of deals, as opposed to kind of in the weeds. So I've been able to shed the, expense report approvals and some of the other sales managers,
all the other fun
really
stuff.
Kind of moved into a real mentoring role, which is great. I really enjoy it. I think it's the exact same process as selling big deals, as mentoring salespeople.
Yeah.
You have to be an active listener. You have to really care about helping them. And then you have to not, and here's the cautionary tale that I've learned again, is it's not about me telling them what to do. It's me trying to help them understand why I'm thinking and how I'm thinking about what I'm suggesting. so that they can kind of move that mindset more towards their belief that they can do big deals. I mean,
Because it has
doing
to
the first
start
one is
there.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got to imagine they're all in the product trap. This is what we do. This is why it's better. This is how it
Yeah.
works.
And we make stuff, so we're very proud of the stuff we make.
Sure. Go
And
figure.
we love to show it to people.
Yeah.
Right? That's information exchange. That's not deal creation. The product really is, you know, we use this phrase in our company, like, if you make tires, not everybody needs tires today, right? But there are some people that need tires.
Yeah.
But just because you make tires and they need tires doesn't mean they're going to buy your tires. So there is a lot of work to find people that are in your space that want to do a deal, kind of all the pick and shovel work on the front end.
Yeah.
But what I've always believed is, and I think it's the confidence that comes with experience and with winning, is if I can ask the right questions and really get to where I think we've got and play some financial scenarios and we get a little momentum, then I hate losing if I get that far. Yeah. And I'm fully convinced that I can create the right context that we can put this deal together. And so it's like, you almost have to, it's refuse to lose, but I'm not in the bulldozer style. It's like, it's just simply all about creating context so that the information that we're exchanging is moving the deal forward, not just exchanging information.
And what do you see as reps having the hardest part with this? Is it mindset? Is it skill set? Or do they allow the client to control the process instead of them guiding the process?
I think it's all three. And it's easy to fall into all three traps. It's really hard, even though you read the books, it's really hard to not want to. I mean, you really can't drive, right? The client's going to drive.
Yeah.
Right? You can maybe unfold the map and you can suggest the right way to get there.
You can give directions and suggestions and explanations.
Yeah, there's a great place to stop for lunch over here on the way. There's lots of communication and guidance you can give, but the client's going to drive.
Yeah.
And so if and there's other things in their life and their job beyond what you want to talk about, right? Yeah. So you've got to create to me, that as deals stall, and they all stall. Every deal I've talked about, I've had to, bring out the life support paddles 5 or 6 times to get them done, right?
Analogy, yeah.
Right? Because they've just been, they've gone sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to bring them back. But if you've done the work and you have the confidence and you can create that context, then you can bring these deals, you can bring back the energy, but you got to have the patience, and you can't just be like, why haven't you answered my emails in 2 weeks? Like, well, I know who you are and I know what you want to talk about. So if I'm not calling you,
I don't want to talk to you.
You should be able to figure that out.
Pretty easy. Yeah.
I'm not ready, right? Or now's not the right time, or there's other things going on.
I don't need anything from you.
I don't need anything right now. So I think, all the things you mentioned, being too much about the product and not about the outcome, trying to drive instead of being a really good co-pilot, trying to be the pilot, because it doesn't work very well. And the bigger the deal, the more difficult that becomes. Now, that doesn't mean you aren't going to be the Sherpa on this journey, right? But it's still their journey. It's not your journey.
You can't drag them.
You can't drag. Yeah. You can drag them part way. Yeah, you can drag them part way, and I've done that. But at some point, they get tired of that.
And how do you handle? I got to imagine the end run from your competitors or the incumbent is the natural thing once this surface that they're losing this big chunk of business.
Yeah, often the change is not as direct with so we make powered equipment, things that make these cleaning jobs easier. And it's not always the direct powered equipment folks that are coming after us, even though they're out there. We're very well versed in understanding how we position against them in the market. But it's the people you don't think about, right? It may be the person's chemical that you're using, right, who is a trusted advisor, doesn't feel like a competitor to the client, but can very much derail your deal. Or in our business, a lot of cleaning tasks are outsourced to a third-party service vendor, right? So we may be talking to a client and didn't do enough homework to understand who's actually doing this work, because we're so excited to talk about our solution. And that vendor may feel threatened. They may feel like, hey, I'm going to have to add capital expense to a contract I'm already not making any money on, all kinds of things. So, I think competition can come from a lot of places. It's not always the obvious one. Most cases, it's not the obvious one.
And do they ever, or how often do they hamstring the deal at the last moment with a C-level call after? They probably have better relationships there than you guys.
Absolutely.
Because they've been there longer.
They're already a trusted vendor. There's always a call, right? There's on big deals. There's always somebody trying to keep you from getting it, right? Yeah. If you assume there isn't, you're making a bad
judgment call.
But I think going back to what they can't see is the projected financial impact that you've already kind of baked into your glide path on your solution selling. So it's really hard to be a trusted advisor if the person on the other end is saying, so what you're telling me is I shouldn't save this $75 million. Like, that's your advice. So if the context is right, the competition at the end has a very difficult time. But if you didn't plan to close all the windows and doors along the way, then your deal will stall at the end and you won't know why.
And what are the most common questions you get when a rep comes to you?
Yeah, probably the same ones that most people get. I can't get this person to respond to me.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's a repair.
Well, you
right?
sent them an email that was all about you. Didn't really deliver any insight.
Oh.
Right. Early prospecting to me is all about insight sharing, to try and say, hey, like,
build some curiosity. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that the frustration of, hey, how do I get in the game? Right. These people aren't letting me in the game. Right. Well, that's probably true. Right. So you haven't created the picture that makes them want to play this game. They may just not be in the position that this game is of interest to them at this particular time. Yeah. So there's kind of that. And then you get to, a lot lately, I think, because we talk a lot about financial modeling today, is a lot of newer, younger salespeople, they don't have the confidence to walk in and say, I can save you $75 million, right? Because they get nervous about the number, but if you take it in scale, right, that 75 million may be across 2,000 locations. But if you just scale it down, it's $100,000 in a year. It's not, the number's just the scale of the organization. What you got to do is understand the root numbers before you add all the multipliers, and then it's not scary, right? So I think you got to really have solid belief that whatever you're going to suggest is actually executable, and that you're going to be there on the journey and make sure that they win, right? Because otherwise you'll just sell one deal. If you want to sell a lot of deals, you have to make sure that they trusted you, they gave you your money, their money. You have to make sure they won.
Yeah, right. Great. Hey, Alan, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
our company's Kaivaccom. My podcast, I did a few. I'm going to do a few more. It's called Coming Clean: The Truth About Cleaning. So you can look for that on.
Truth about cleaning.
I should say the brutal truth about cleaning, but that would be IP
hey, that's
infringement,
copywritten,
Ryan. Yeah, I'm not about that. Just find me on LinkedIn, Alan Randolph at Kaivac, and love to chat with anybody and share some wisdom. I really appreciated being on the show. It was a blast talking about sales, and hopefully somebody takes some from this that helps them close a big deal.